Tongariro National Park is under constant pressure for more infrastructure, bigger car parks, traffic management to handle congestion, more toilets, and of course to human waste management. The reality is, this has put in pressure on the mountains, and there needs to be a balance to the visitor impacts with conservation goals, environmental impacts, and sustainable values to ensure the natural beauty and the significance of this landscape is secured for another 1,000 years. On the 23rd of September 1887, the three peaks, Ruapehu, Narahari, and Tongariro, became New Zealand's first national park and the fourth national park in the world. Tongariro National Park is the only dual World Heritage Park in New Zealand, and this was only made possible because of the local tangata whenua.
Kia ora koutou, nā mihi kia koutou katoa. I just want to tautoko Paul's kōrero and acknowledging our hosts for this event and acknowledging the haukainga, Ngāi Tahu, and to each and every one of you here today. Kia ora koutou, nā mihi. Our mountains, our maunga, we're a part of the mountain and the mountain is a part of us. We live and breathe that, and we celebrate our mountains. Everyone's sort of seen through the presentations what they mean to each and every one of us. These our mountain climbers that love the mountains because of that reason. We have our skiers and snowboarders that love the mountains because of those activities, and we love our mountains because they're a part of us and we're a part of them. And so if we look after our mountains, they will look after us. And so that's just sort of coming from our cultural perspective. But I wanted to, for Ngāti Rangi, it's the primary sort of key area and issue is our water. Our pristine waters come from our mountains. And so our mountains are our tupuna. They provide us with water, and we are water. So, water is the utmost, and it sustains us, and it comes from our mountains. So just looking around our holistic approach for our environment and our culture, that's what our mountains sort of mean to us. They're the essence of who we are. We sort of are underpinned by what's been passed on to us from each generation, and that's just the understanding of looking after our maunga, our lands, our waters, and then that way all of those will look after us as people who are a part of that whole life cycle. So that's called kaitiakitanga, or being a guardian. So looking after our lands, our waters, ourselves, we are guardians of all of those. And not just tangata whenua, Indigenous people, all of us. It's all of our responsibility to look after all of those realms. As Indigenous people, we just culturally and spiritually connected to these places. Just briefly, in our waiata yesterday for the pōwhiri, that waiata just talked around, it was more around our marae and who's going to look after our marae next? Who's going to look after it with sincerity, integrity, and truth? And so we can apply this in other areas. We can apply this on our maunga. It's probably appropriate that we apply it to our maunga for this summit. So we're sort of asking, have we looked after our maunga? Yes, no, maybe, maybe not. Who's going to take over? What are we going to leave them? What are they going to pick up? A mess? Maybe. So it's up to us to try and leave our environment in as pristine condition as we can, or improve it, so that when we give it to our kids, they haven't got so much of a bigger job to do. But I think they've got a pretty mammoth job at the moment. So just finally, on the last couple of verses of that song, it was just around the tika, the pono, and te aroha, and those are just around the integrity and sincerity and how we do this honestly, how we look after our summits, our maunga, in an honest way. So when we're going through this kōrero, as Paul mentioned, Ngāti Rangi, we're sort of the guardians or kaitiakitanga of the southern boundary of the national park, and we've got our whanaunga here for Tūwharetoa, the kaitiaki and guardians of the northern park. We've got our other whānau here in our group that are western as well, so we all share that role because it might be impractical for us to try and look after the northern side because that's way around the other side. It's better off that we sort of look after the area that we can manage. And that's managing it in partnership with the likes of DOC and our local community because that's the only way we can do it. And that's all together. So kia ora koutou. I just thought I'd just sort of share that a little bit and hopefully that helps. You get a better understanding on how we look after our mountains, our lands, our waters, and ourselves. So kia ora koutou.
Ko Tongariro te maunga, ko taupō te moana, ko Tūwharetoa te iwi, ko te tangata, ko Bubs Matahau. So, especially for our internationals, ko Tongariro te maunga, it is our identity, it is who we are. Like Dave mentioned earlier on, you know, the mountain is me and I am the mountain. Ko taupō te moana is more around the, the 70% of our makeup is the water, and the water from where we need and get that sustenance from makes up who we are. And that ko Tūwharetoa te iwi, so the tribe of place and where we are. For Tūwharetoa, ko te hau, te tangata is about our traditional leadership that we have and the role that our ariki or our chief, paramount chief, Tumu Te Hau plays in keeping those three values together. I suppose I kind of at this point do need to make a disclaimer. I can only talk on behalf of Tūwharetoa. Can't talk on behalf of like whanaunga here for Ngāti Rangi. And our values, I suppose, and what drives us and what gets us out of bed every morning is based on tikanga and kawa. And so those protocols and those customs kind of what drive us in our everyday life, I suppose. And they may differ from iwi to iwi, from tribe to tribe, and certainly, not saying that they're a lot different from us, but a lot of those, I suppose, holistic, more fundamental values are pretty much not too dissimilar. And Paul mentioned a little while ago about UNESCO's dual World Heritage status that Tongariro has bestowed on it. For us as Tūwharetoa, it's basically brought a international eyes to actually ensure that we are doing things at an international standard, not just at a national level. The cultural values, which the criteria from UNESCO had to be revised in '93, because prior to that, the cultural values were only bestowed on places that were kind of man-built. So the criteria changed that talks about our association to places that were actually not made by human and that. And the likes of, Dave talked a little bit about water, and so for and the importance of water. So as an example for Tūwharatō, with Lake Taupo being within our tribal boundaries, and at one end you've got the Waikato River running north. On the western side you've got the Whanganui River running south. You've got the rivers running north and south out of the Rangitike, Rangitaiki, on the eastern side. And we look at it as the great fish of Maui, and so Lake Taupo being that heart, tika Maui. And I suppose the inherent role that I got brought up is in order for the rest of the fish to be strong, the heart needs to be strong. And so it's, I suppose, a more of a role and a responsibility, not only to protect the waters within our area, but also for neighbouring tribes and neighbouring communities. And I suppose, yeah, so I was kind of thinking earlier on about, how would you, easiest way to offend Māori, probably send them to a conference that's talking about some of the subject that we're talking this morning. And then, I was kind of thinking, oh, geez, shall we put on PowerPoint? And I said, oh, no, we only got 15 minutes, let's do it fast. And I was thinking of a prop. And I was kind of looking around, and I thought, there's a table in that, and how do I put that use that as a prop? And I remember as a kid, even if I just sat on that table and that, I just got the hugest hiding, and that from my grandmother, and just basically in the likes of, I suppose, that sacredness of and we went, and I hadn't even done anything. I think my pants were still clean. They certainly went after I got a hiding. And that, but in my grandmother's time, and that you just did not mix this with potentially where you were going to eat, and that. So look out if I see anybody at lunchtime around sitting on the table. But yeah, no, I kind of don't really know where to go from there. I just thought I'd just leave it as that and see how we are for questions, and probably more open for questions. And thank you.